My dad's last letter exposed my mom's secret life and sent her to prison. My mother thought she buried the truth with my father. She was wrong. My dad left behind a letter, a key, and a roadmap to every crime she ever committed. Hi, I'm Jake, 32, and last month my life blew up when my dad's funeral ended with his lawyer reading a secret letter, and my mom walking out in handcuffs. It started with a whisper, like these things always do. My sister leaned over during the service and murmured, "Why is Harold here?" That was weird because Harold was our dad's former business partner, the one he sued 5 years ago for embezzlement. The one who'd vanished after the trial. Now here he was, sitting in the back row like he belonged, head bowed respectfully, but something in his eyes. I don't know. It looked like triumph. I tried to ignore it. Tried to focus on the eulogy. On the fact that my father, complicated as he was gone. My mom sat front row in her best black dress, sunglasses still on, even inside. I figured grief. I had no idea it was something else entirely. After the burial, we gathered at the house for what was supposed to be a quiet reception. Sandwiches. Condolences. Awkward hugs from people who didn't really know what to say. Then Harold showed up again, holding a manila envelope. "This belongs to Jake," he said. "Your father asked me to give it to him after the service." He handed me the envelope, nodded once, and left. Inside was a letter, handwritten on legal pad paper, dated 6 months before Dad died. The first line? "If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you need to know the truth about your mother." I sat down so fast I nearly missed the chair. The letter was 6 pages long, full of things I wasn't ready to read in front of cousins and cheese platters. I slipped it into my jacket and went upstairs to the guest room. Locked the door. Sat on the bed with my heart in my throat. Dad's handwriting was rough, like he'd written it in a hurry. Or maybe in anger. He started with the money. "Your mother has been lying to you for years," he wrote. "About the business, about Harold, about me." Apparently the embezzlement charges? They weren't real. Dad made them up. At Mom's request. Because she was the one skimming money out of the business, and Harold found out. She convinced Dad that Harold was blackmailing her. That he'd forced her to funnel money. That she was protecting the family. Dad believed her. Until he didn't. He found evidence. Bank statements. Secret accounts. A safe deposit box under her maiden name. He confronted her. She denied everything. Then she threatened him. "I didn't go to the police," Dad wrote. "Not for her. Not for you. But I made copies of everything. And I left them with Harold." I stared at the page, feeling the floor tilt under me. "If anything happens to me," Dad wrote, "go to Harold. He'll know what to do. And Jake, don't trust your mother." I was still holding the letter when I heard the front door open downstairs. A different kind of sound. Heavy. Purposeful. Police boots. Then came the words that spun the whole room sideways. "Linda Thompson, you're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." My mother. My mom. Still wearing her sunglasses. Still looking like the perfect grieving widow. Cuffed. Silent. No resistance. I stepped out onto the landing in time to see her being led out the door. She saw me. Just once. And gave me the smallest nod. Not sorrow. Not fear. Approval. Like this had all been part of the plan. The house emptied fast after that. Nothing clears a room like a widow in handcuffs. One of my aunts dropped her wine glass. My cousin Laura said, "This is so inappropriate." Like the police had interrupted a wedding, not a crime scene. I just stood there on the landing, holding my father's letter in one hand and the banister with the other, trying to keep the world from spinning. Harold was back. Again. I don't know how he moved so quietly through a crowd, but suddenly he was in the hallway looking at me like he'd lost someone too. "You read it?" he asked. "Yeah," I said hoarse. "I read it. I've got everything," he said. "Files. Photos. Copies of every transaction. I've been waiting years for this." "Waiting for what? For her to get arrested? For me to find out my mom's a criminal?" No, Jake. I was waiting for you to be ready to believe it. That pissed me off more than I expected. So you just sat on this while my dad died thinking he was crazy? I tried to tell him, Harold said. I did. But she was good. Really good. She had him convinced that I was the liar. And once he picked a side, he shrugged. There wasn't much I could do. Except prepare for this day. He handed me a key. This opens a storage unit in Somerville. Unit B42. Everything's in there. Your father wanted you to have it. Before I could say anything, my sister Morgan appeared behind me, pale and furious. What the hell is going on, Jake? Why is Mom in handcuffs? Why are the cops talking about wire fraud? She stole from the business, I said quietly. For years. That's impossible. She framed Harold. Dad found out. He wrote it all down. I held out the letter. Morgan scanned the first page, then stopped cold. This is Dad's handwriting. Yeah. She sat down on the stairs like her legs had given out. I thought he was being paranoid. When he started locking his office door. When he changed his passwords. I thought he was losing it. We sat there in silence for a long time. Then Morgan whispered. She looked me in the eye this morning, Jake. At the funeral. She held my hand and said we'd get through this together. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me pick up. A voice on the other end. Calm. Female. Unfamiliar. Mr. Thompson? This is Agent Rivera with the FBI. We're going to need you to come down to the field office tomorrow. There are some documents in your name we need to discuss. I blinked. What documents? A pause. Then. There are 4 shell companies linked to your social security number. Created 3 years ago. We believe your mother set them up using your identity. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry, Agent Rivera said. But it appears you were part of the operation. Whether you knew it or not. My mother didn't just lie. She framed me too. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I sat in my kitchen, lights off, letter on the table, and the words 4 shell companies in your name echoing like a death knell through my head. I kept trying to piece together how, when, why, but the timeline just bled together into this mess of birthdays, tax returns, a vague memory of her asking for my social once because she needed it for health insurance stuff. That was 3 years ago. 3 years ago. The same year my credit score tanked for no reason. The same year I got denied for a car loan I should have been approved for. The same year she told me, "Just let me handle your taxes, sweetheart. It's easier this way." I thought she was helping me. Turns out, she was laundering millions through companies I didn't even know existed, with my name on the paperwork. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the Boston FBI field office with Harold beside me like some cursed emotional support attorney. Agent Rivera was younger than I expected, but all business. She slid a folder across the table that had my name printed on the front. Jacob Robert Thompson. Inside, articles of incorporation. Wire transfers. Invoices. A forged signature that looked just like mine. A photo of my mother, smiling at a bank clerk. Handing over documents. Setting up accounts. It's impressive, Rivera said, not unkindly. She clearly planned this for a while. And she insulated herself with family names. Yours. Morgan's. Even your father's. She used my dead father's name? I said. She opened 2 accounts under an LLC named JRT Legacy Holdings. That did something to me. Like getting punched in a bruise you didn't know was still sore. Harold leaned forward. So what happens now? Agent Rivera laced her fingers. You're not under arrest, Jake. But you're involved, legally speaking. At minimum, you'll need to clear your name. At worst, you'll need a really good lawyer and a forensic accountant. I turned to Harold. You're not a lawyer, are you? No, he said, pulling a card from his coat pocket. But I know the best in the city. The next few weeks were a blur. Legal filings. Financial statements. Forensic audits. Calls to Morgan that ended in screaming matches, then tears. I found out she'd been looped into it too, just more subtly. Mom had used her old college address to set up 2 P.O. boxes, forged her signature on a couple of contracts. Not enough to sink her. Just enough to tie her hands. I thought she was protecting us, Morgan said one night. The way she always said she was. I thought that's what love looked like. Sacrifice. No, I said. That's what control looks like. Wrapped in a bow. Then came the trial. It wasn't a full jury trial. Not yet. Just a pre-trial hearing. Mom was offered a deal, plead guilty, turn over the funds, and serve 10 years. She declined. Said she'd rather die than admit guilt. So she walked into court like she was heading to a brunch reservation. Hair perfect. Pearls. That same sad smile she'd worn at Dad's funeral. And she looked directly at me as she sat down. Like she still believed she had power. Then my lawyer stood and handed the judge the letter from my father, and every file Harold had kept. And for the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never seen on my mother's face. Fear. Not of prison. Of losing control. The plea deal came back on a Tuesday. 15 years. No parole for the first 10. Restitution required. All assets frozen. The prosecution wasn't playing anymore. Not after they found the offshore accounts in the Caymans, the fake charities, the ledger that linked her, donations, to political bribes, and certainly not after Harold testified with a literal briefcase full of receipts like he was auditioning for CSI, Financial Crimes Unit. My mother still said no. She told the judge, in open court, I refuse to be painted as the villain in a story I wrote to protect my children. I remember sitting there, blinking at her, thinking, are you serious right now? Like we weren't all watching the same documentary unravel in real time. Like she hadn't taken everything my dad built and turned it into her personal front for fraud. Morgan whispered, she's delusional. And I didn't disagree. The judge scheduled the formal trial date. 6 months out. I could already see the headlines brewing. Prominent widow accused of multi-million-dollar fraud, family torn apart. They didn't even have to exaggerate. But here's the thing no one talks about when your mother goes full criminal mastermind. Life doesn't pause. You still have to go to work. You still have to answer emails. You still have to figure out how to explain to HR that your emergency leave involves testifying against the woman who raised you. And people start looking at you differently, like you're contaminated by association. Even my girlfriend at the time, Rachel, started pulling back. I don't blame her. It's hard to stay close to someone whose family just detonated in public. I don't know what to say anymore, she said one night after dinner. You don't have to say anything, I told her. But that's the problem. People think silence is neutral. It's not. Silence becomes absence. Absence becomes distance. And distance becomes goodbye. She left a week later. I came home to a note and a mostly empty apartment. Morgan moved into my guest room not long after that. She didn't say why, but I think she just didn't want to be alone either. We fought a lot, but in the weirdest way, it was healing. Like finally we could stop pretending that being in this family hadn't left scars. Do you think she loved us? Morgan asked one night over wine. I think she loved owning us, I said. Like trophies. We were both quiet for a long time. Then Morgan said, what if Dad knew that we'd end up like this? He did, I said. That's why he left me that letter. He was trying to fix it. Even if it was too late for him. That night, I opened a different envelope. One I'd almost forgotten about in the chaos, from the storage unit Harold gave me access to. Inside, a notarized document, signed by Dad a month before his death. In the event of my death, I named Jacob Robert Thompson as executor of my estate, and legal guardian of any remaining assets. I trust him to make the right decisions, and to protect Morgan, if I no longer can. I stared at the page, my father's signature at the bottom. For the first time in months, something clicked into place. I wasn't just the collateral damage in this story. I was the one holding the map out. Now all I had to do was decide where to go. The deeper I went into Dad's files, the more I realized just how much of his life had been spent in quiet defense. He'd left behind more than paperwork. There were flash drives, password-protected folders, even a series of recorded voice memos on an old iPhone 4 he'd stashed inside a hollowed-out copy of The Art of War. Because of course he did. He'd labeled them simply, "For Jake. In case she wins." And in those recordings, I heard a version of my father I never knew, not the tired man from the last few years, the one who always seemed a little smaller every Thanksgiving. This was the sharp one, the builder, the fighter. "If she turns Morgan against you, don't blame her. Your sister wants to believe people mean well. That's not weakness. That's hope. You're going to feel guilty for not seeing it sooner. Don't. She was good at this. Too good. Jake, if I'm gone, you win by surviving. By living a life that's clean. That's yours." I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there on the floor of my living room surrounded by flash drives, legal pads, and copies of Shell Company filings and felt purpose. Like I hadn't just inherited a mess. I'd inherited instructions. So I got to work. Over the next 3 months, I helped the federal team untangle a web of transactions so complex it made Inception look like a coloring book. Offshore accounts under alias names. Fake charities that funneled money from state contracts. At least 2 shell companies connected to a sitting state senator, who suddenly retired. To spend more time with family. The press dubbed it the widow's web. Which would have been funny if it weren't my mom. Meanwhile, Morgan and I kept showing up to court. Week after week. Sometimes we testified. Sometimes we just sat in the gallery, stone-faced, as Linda Thompson made headlines in every paper in New England. People started recognizing us. Not for good reasons. At a coffee shop one morning, the barista handed me my latte and said, "Hey, I just want to say what your mom did. That wasn't on you." I nodded, too stunned to speak. Then he added, "But what you doing? Testifying? That takes guts, man." It was the first time someone had said that. Not sorry. Not how embarrassing. Just thank you. The trial itself was grueling. Prosecution called nearly 40 witnesses. Linda never testified. Her lawyers probably told her not to. But she watched everything. And every time I took the stand, I felt her stare burrow into my skin. Still, I told the truth. About the fake accounts. The signatures. The way she manipulated loyalty into silence. And then came Morgan's turn. She was shaking when she got up there. But her voice never wavered. "I wanted to believe my mother loved us. That she was trying to protect us. But I've realized she was only ever protecting herself. And that's not love. That's control with a prettier name." I didn't know whether to cry or applaud. Linda didn't even flinch. The jury deliberated for less than 2 days. They found her guilty on 17 counts. Fraud. Money laundering. Identity theft. Conspiracy. Wire fraud. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. I thought that would be the end of it. But the final surprise came 2 weeks later, when Harold showed up at my apartment, this time with a box. "What's this?" I asked. He smiled. "Your dad's last gift. He asked me to hold it until the trial ended." Inside the box was a thick envelope and a flash drive. On the drive, a short video. Dad sitting in his office, looking straight at the camera. "Jake," he said, "if you're seeing this, it means she didn't win. You did. Now here's the fun part." I opened the envelope. Inside, a deed. To a lake house in Vermont. In my name. Paid in full. He grinned from the screen. "Time to start over, kid. Take Morgan. Go heal. Go live." And just like that, the last piece fell into place. The lake house was real. Like, so real, it shocked both me and Morgan when we pulled up and saw the place for the first time. A-frame roof, wraparound porch, dock that stretched out into glassy water so still it looked photoshopped. The kind of place you assume only exists in Hallmark movies and real estate scams. But there it was. Ours. It took a second for the weirdness to settle in. For so long, our entire lives had been defined by courtrooms and statements and whispers and shame. And now suddenly, peace? I didn't know what to do with that. Morgan didn't either. The first few days, we just existed. Slept late. Ate garbage cereal. Read. Stared out at the lake. I remember sitting on the dock with her one afternoon, both of us drinking lukewarm coffee, watching ducks argue over breadcrumbs like they were reenacting a telenovela. This is the first time I've felt quiet in my head, Morgan said, not looking at me. Yeah. Me too. I still can't believe she did all that. Like I can, obviously. But it's like watching a horror movie starring your own mom. I know. She stared at the water for a long time. Then, barely audible, she said, "Do you think she ever really loved us?" It was the question we always circled back to. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to give my sister that. But the truth? I think she loved the idea of us. The performance of family. The way it made her look. Morgan blinked hard. Yeah. That sounds right. We stayed at the lake house for a month. No news. No court filings. No surprises. Until we got the letter. Official DOJ stationery. I almost didn't open it, assumed it was more paperwork. But then I saw the subject line. Restitution disbursement, estate of Linda Thompson. Wait. Estate? Morgan gasped. Did she? No. She hadn't died. She'd made a deal. After sentencing, Linda had agreed to sign over the last of her assets, the ones the feds hadn't found, in exchange for the possibility of early parole after 10 years. Which meant they were legally bound to distribute her remaining funds to us. And it wasn't nothing. The check was 7 figures. Split between me and Morgan. Clean. Taxed. Cleared by the DOJ. My hands shook holding it. Not because I wanted her money. But because of what it meant. Morgan read my expression perfectly. You don't have to take it. I shook my head. Oh, I'm taking it. She blinked. Seriously? Hell yes. That money was ours. She stole from Dad. From me. From you. I'm not going to reject it on principle just so I can keep suffering righteously. I'm gonna use it. For what? I looked around. At the lake. The trees. The dock Dad probably stepped onto when he was dreaming this whole place up. I'm gonna make something permanent. And that's when I got the idea. To build something here. Not just a retreat. Not just a second chance for me and Morgan. A sanctuary. I called it the Thompson Center. A nonprofit. Fully funded. A place for people rebuilding after family trauma. A place to come and stay and breathe again. No paperwork. No explanations. Just room. Morgan cried when I showed her the mission statement. I cried when I signed the final paperwork. And Dad? Well, his signature was already on the deed. He knew. He always knew. The grand opening of the Thompson Center was on a bright Saturday in late June. We kept it small. No press. No big speeches. Just 30 guests, all survivors of family trauma, all standing in the sun holding lemonade and blinking like maybe, just maybe, this was a place where nothing bad would happen. Morgan stood beside me in a flowy blue dress, her hair tied back, hands clasped like she still couldn't believe this was real. I'd caught her crying 3 times that morning, but she kept brushing it off like allergies. There were no allergies. Just decades of grief finally letting go. We gave a short welcome. Introduced the therapists, the yoga instructor, the cook who made gluten-free everything without being annoying about it. Then we opened the doors. Watching people walk in, people who'd been scapegoated, gaslit, erased by their own blood, and seeing their shoulders drop, their eyes widen, their pace slow, it wrecked me. This was what Dad wanted. Not just justice. Healing. After the guests settled, I went out to the dock. Alone. I sat where Dad probably sat, stared out at the same still water, and read the last page of the letter he'd written me. The one I hadn't touched until now. Jake, if you're reading this, it means you made it through. You told the truth. You didn't let her bury it. I know I wasn't always the father you needed. I let her get away with too much for too long. But this lake, this house, this silence? It's for you. And when Morgan's ready, it's for her too. Build something. Even if it starts with just putting one foot in front of the other. Build something better. I love you, kid. I always did. I folded the letter. Pressed it to my chest. Said thank you out loud to no one. To everyone. Later that night, we lit a fire pit. Guests told stories. Someone brought out a guitar. Morgan made s'mores with a girl named Cassie who hadn't smiled in 3 years. Her words, not mine, until that day. And I felt it. That thing I thought I'd never feel again. Peace. Not the quiet kind. Not the no one's yelling kind. But the kind that comes when you know who you are, when you stop bleeding out to keep everyone else warm. At some point, someone asked me why I named it the Thompson Center, why I didn't change the name after everything that happened. I told them the truth. Because we changed it. Me and Morgan. We took what was broken and turned it into something that gives back. That's what healing is. Not forgetting. Not pretending. It's repurposing. I thought my story ended the day my mother walked out in cuffs. But I was wrong. It ended the day I stopped trying to salvage that family. And started building my own. And that's what I want you to know if you've made it all the way here. Your pain? It's not proof that you failed. It's proof you survived. Now it's your turn. Go build something. Because you deserve it. Thanks for listening. And hey, if my story helped you feel seen, maybe it wasn't just for me after all.